Greetings to everyone. Welcome back once again to my educational channel on biology. In this video, we're going to discuss two types of human tissues or animal tissues, namely nerve tissue and connective tissue. Now, in the first video, we have already discussed epithelial tissue and muscle tissue in part 1. Okay, so this is part 2. We will discuss nerve tissue and connective tissue. For example, do you know that adipose tissue, as shown here, is a type of connective tissue? So what is adipose tissue? It's a tissue that stores fats in the fat cells. So if a person eats a lot of fats, for example, from fried foods or even from fruits like durians, all right, that has a high content of fat, then the excess fat will be stored in the fat cells, and fat cells are filled with fat. So much fat that the nucleus and the cytoplasm is pushed to the corner of the cell, right? So we're going to look at these cells later on. So let's find out more about nerve tissue and connective tissue. The learning standards are as follows. Living processes in multicellular organisms. Cell organization in humans. Identify cells, tissues, or organs in an organ system. So there are 4 types of human or animal tissues, which are epithelial tissue and muscle tissue, already discussed in the first video, part 1. And in this second video, we're going to discuss connective tissue and nerve tissue. It's a fun question or hot question that's asked by some students. Is bone a living or dead tissue? Explain your answer. So think about this question. Is bone a living or dead tissue? And we'll come to the answer later on in the video when we discuss the bone tissues. So our topic is on cell organization in humans. And to recap, in humans and animals, tissues can be classified into 4 different types, which are epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nerve tissue, and muscle tissue. So our memory tip is economy, right? As in the previous video, we have discussed this memory tip. E is for epithelial tissue, CO for connective tissue, N for nerve tissue, and M for muscle tissue. So remember this useful acronym, okay? Economy for the 4 different types of human tissue or animal tissue. So here's an overview of the different types of tissues in humans and animals, right? So we have discussed epithelial tissue, A, epithelial tissue, and B, muscle tissue. Now we're going to discuss in this video connective tissue and nerve tissue. So connective tissue is made up of many different types of tissues. It consists of the loose connective tissues, fibrous connective tissues like tendons and ligaments, supportive connective tissues like cartilage and bone, adipose tissue, and fluid connective tissues, which are blood and lymph. And then for nerve tissue, it consists of neurons. The nerve cells called neurons. Now, what are the functions of connective tissue and nerve tissue? So briefly, connective tissue is needed for support and protection, binding, links or connects organs together, transports nutrients, stores fat, and for the defense of the body against pathogens. Whereas nerve tissue is needed for coordination and control of body activity. So let's discuss the third type of tissue, which is connective tissue. Some aspects to look up for and to remember are the types of connective tissue, the structure of the connective tissue, functions, and also location of the connective tissue. So let's discuss connective tissue. Now, composition of connective tissue. It may consist of cells and fibers in a matrix, all right? Cells and fibers, long thin strands of fibers in a matrix. Now, matrix is a ground substance. That is the substance in which the cells and the fibers are found, all right? It's the background substance. Now, the example of fiber is collagen. So this is an important fiber in connective tissue that strengthens the tissue, right? And collagen is a type of protein that's found in hair, skin especially, and nails, and so forth. So connective tissue is widely distributed in the body, and There are many types of connective tissue with different functions. Let's look at 8 examples of connective tissue. First, we have the loose connective tissue. Secondly, we have the fibrous or dense connective tissue. So examples are tendons and ligaments. Then we have the supportive connective tissue, that is cartilage and bones that provide support. Fourthly, we have the fluid connective tissue, which is blood and lymph. And finally, we have adipose tissue that stores fat. Right. So what are the functions of connective tissue basically? So it depends on the type of connective tissue. For example, connective tissue links and connects other tissues together or organs together. Examples are tendons that connect the muscle to the bone, okay? And ligaments connect bone to bone. So second function, it helps to support the body. For example, bone, okay? The whole human skeleton is made of the bone tissues, and this helps to support the body. Thirdly, it protects organs. For example, the skull in the head protects the brain, right? And the rib cage protects the heart and lungs. Now, fourthly, transport nutrients. So this is the function of blood. For example, blood transports glucose and also transports oxygen to the body cells. Now, fifth, connective tissue helps in the storage of fats. This is true for adipose tissue, a type of connective tissue, okay, that has fat cells to store fats. Lastly, connective tissue defends the body against microorganisms. This is the function of blood and lymph, which contains the white blood cells that can destroy microorganisms that cause diseases, called the pathogens. So what is the general structure of connective tissue? As we discussed just now, it consists of different types of cells and fibers in a matrix, which is the ground substance. And the fibers are usually collagen, and it could also be elastin, a type of elastic fiber. So these two fibers give the connective tissue strength. Right. So here we see a picture of the general structure of connective tissue. The yellow substance is the matrix, the material in between the cells, and we have the cells here, cells of the connective tissue, and then there are fibers like collagen and elastin. So here's a new memory clip for examples of connective tissue. Since there are so many types or examples of connective tissues, so the sentence is a bit longer. Fat cat block. LOL means laugh out loud. Okay. So F is for fibrous connective tissue. A is for adipose tissue. T is for tendon. CAT is for cartilage. BLO is for blood. The other B is for bone. Then LO is for loose connective tissue, and one more L is for limb. Okay, limb is not mentioned in the textbook, but it is a type of connective tissue, like blood. So now, if you look at this picture, you can see fat cat. So fat cat blob. Fat cat is like a blob, which is a round shape, and he likes to laugh out loud. LOL, laugh out loud. So here's an overview of 6 types of connective tissues, all right? Before we go on to discuss about them in detail. So number 1 is the loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue links the epithelial tissue, for example, on the surface of the skin, to the tissues below it. It also fixes organs in their positions. Secondly, we have the dense connective tissue or fibrous connective tissue. Okay, textbook uses the term fibrous connective tissue. It's also called the dense connective tissue. These form ligaments and tendons. So 2 examples of fibrous connective tissues are ligaments and tendons. Now, ligaments. A ligament is a connective tissue that connects bone to bone. For example, at the elbow joint here. Okay, the humerus is connected to the ulna by ligaments. So the ligament will hold the bones in place during movement. All right. Now, tendon. A tendon connects muscles to bones. A muscle to a bone. So at the end of the muscle, there will be a white color tissue, and that is the tendon. Usually it's white in color, and it's like a long thin strip like that. That tendon connects the muscle to the bone. For example, the triceps here, this is the muscle called the triceps, is connected to the ulna by a tendon here. Okay. So Ligament connects bone to bone, but tendon connects muscles to bone. Okay, muscle to bone. Next, we have number 3, the third type of connective tissue, called cartilage. Cartilage is a type of tissue that's also white in color, usually, and it covers the bone tips. When you eat the chicken drumstick, you can, when you come to the bones after eating the meat, you will find that the bones have a layer of white tissue on top. That is the cartilage. Okay, so why do they cover the bone tips? To prevent the bones from wearing out at the joints, especially during movement. Okay. Furthermore, that means the cartilage protects the bones, and also cartilage is smooth. It's a smooth type of tissue, so it will reduce friction at the joints here. All right. Now, next we have bone. That's the fourth type of connective tissue. Bone is different from cartilage. It's harder than cartilage. Okay, it forms the body's frame or skeleton, and its function is to support the body. Okay, and also protect the internal organs. For example, at the head region we have the skull. Skull protects what? The internal organ called the brain, right? And then the rib cage in the thoracic region protects what organs? Yes, it protects the heart and the lungs. The rib cage protects the heart and lungs. Now let's go on to number 5, blood tissue. So blood is a tissue too, okay, a connective tissue. It helps to regulate body temperature. For example, through the process of vasodilation. When you feel hot, your blood vessels will increase in size a bit, okay, near the surface of the skin. So this will help more blood to be carried to the surface of the skin, and the heat will be lost through radiation. All right. So in that way, the body temperature will be reduced back to normal. This is just one example of how blood helps to regulate body temperature. Okay, through vaso. Vaso means the blood vessel. Then dilation means it expands in size. Okay, the blood vessels expand in size when hot, when a person is feeling hot. Now, blood also contains a few cells, right? Red blood cells in blood transport oxygen to cells, because red blood cells contain the pigment called hemoglobin, which can bind to oxygen, okay, to transport the oxygen to cells, from lungs to cells. Next, we have the white blood cells. Okay, white blood cells defend the body against pathogens by engulfing them, okay, and destroying them. Okay. So lastly, we have the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue stores fat in the fat cells. And one location for adipose tissue is just under the dermis of the skin. All right. So these fat cells store fat, and then they expand to quite a size, and the whole cell is full of fat. Okay. Now next we have the fat cells also on the surface of main organs like the heart. So these fat tissues will have a cushioning effect to absorb shock, okay, so that the heart can be protected from shocks, especially when the person falls down, as an example. Now let's look in more detail at all these different types of connective tissues. The first type of connective tissue is called the loose connective tissue. Functions: it links and binds epithelial tissue to tissue below it. For example, in the skin, it will bind epithelial tissue on the upper part to the other tissues below it. Secondly, it fixes organs in their positions. And thirdly, it provides cushioning for organs, meaning that this tissue helps to absorb shock, okay, during falls, and this will help to protect the organs. Structure: it has cells and protein fibers called collagen and elastin in a matrix. Then these fibers are loosely organized with large spaces in between them, right? So here's a picture or photo of loose connective tissue. So we can see the two types of fibers here. The pink ones are the collagen fibers, right? The thicker ones here, okay, which are grouped together. And then we have the elastic fibers, which are the black ones, all right? They look like threads, thin threads like that. Then we can see some black spots here. These are the nuclei of the cells of the loose connective tissue, okay? So one word that we need to know is collagen. What is collagen? Collagen is a tough protein and the most abundant protein in human body. It is used to build bones, skin, hair, muscles, tendons, and ligaments. So it builds many different tissues. And it keeps skin from sagging to maintain the plump, youthful look. Okay, for example, this picture shows the forehead of an old person. You can see a lot of wrinkles here. So older people produce less collagen. That's why the wrinkles start to form on the skin, right? Whereas younger people produce more collagen, and this collagen helps to maintain the plump, youthful look. Okay, so the forehead here has no wrinkles, right, for young people, in a young person. So collagen supplements such as collagen pills and collagen in liquid form are touted to increase the collagen in people who take these supplements. Okay, but the pros and cons of collagen supplements is still being researched. All right. There is fibrous connective tissue, or sometimes called dense connective tissue. So these form the ligaments and tendons. Now, what are the functions of fibrous connective tissue? They hold the tissues in place. Okay, for example, a ligament connects bone to bone, as we have mentioned just now. Okay, ligament connects bone to bone, as seen in this picture here. Whereas a tendon connects muscle to bone. Okay. Second function, fibrous connective tissue provides strength, elasticity, and protection. Now, structure. It is made up of cells and tough collagen fibers. Fibers are more abundant and more densely arranged compared to loose connective tissue. That's why it's called dense or fibrous connective tissue. Okay, as you can see in this picture here. So this is a photomicrograph of the tendon. You can see the collagen fibers here in pink, and you can see the little black dots here. These are the cells, okay, in the tissue. Thirdly, there's cartilage. So cartilage is another type of connective tissue. Cartilage functions to cover and protect bone tips. So cartilage prevents bone tips from wearing out at the joints. For example, at the knee joint, now you can see the tip of the bone is covered with the white cartilage here in the first picture. And this is the femur with the cartilage at its ends here and the end of the femur. And this is the tibia bone with the cartilage at the tip here also. Okay, so cartilage prevents bone tips from wearing out at the joints and reduces friction at the joints. It also acts as a shock absorber because it is a bit softer than bone. Okay, and it helps to give support to, especially in the ear and the nose region. Okay, as you can see in the second and third picture here. So you can try to touch the cartilage in your ear. It is flexible, right? And some of it can be a bit elastic, right? So it's also softer than bone, all right? So it also helps to give support to the ear and the nose, the top part of the nose. Now, what is the characteristic of cartilage? Cartilage is strong, firm, flexible, and smooth. Structure. Cartilage cells, called chondrocytes, live in the spaces called the lacunae in jelly-like matrix. And the matrix contains collagen and elastic fibers. So in this picture here, let's look at the lower picture first. So you can see the cartilage cells here, called chondrocytes, in the spaces here, called the lacunae. All right, the holes, it's like holes where the cartilage cells are found. All right, and in the matrix here, the purple color space here, there are fibers too. The fibers are collagen fibers and elastic fibers. All right, now look at the photomicrograph at the top here, or the picture photograph at the top. Now you can see the white lacunae, the space where the cells are found. Okay, the black parts here are the cells. Okay, and then the matrix is dark, quite dark here, and you can see long thin strands here, right? So these are the fibers such as collagen and elastic fibers. The fourth connective tissue is bone. So bone forms the body's frame or skeleton, supports the body and protects internal organs, such as the ribcage protecting the heart and the lungs. Okay, so this is a cross-section through bone tissue. Now, if you have to look closely at the bone tissue, okay, under high power magnification, you will see that the cells are arranged in a circular pattern. Okay, now let's discuss the picture on the left first here. Okay, the drawing. So the bone cells are arranged in a circular pattern, and the bone cells are called osteocytes. Okay, for kssm syllabus, you don't need to know this term, osteocytes. But here we can see that the bone cells are arranged in a circular pattern, like concentric circles like that, with a center here. So this is the feature that helps us to identify bone tissue. You see the cells are arranged in a circular pattern. Okay, this is the structure of the tissue, okay, of bone, the bone tissue. Right in the center here, there are arteries and veins. There's an artery and a vein, and even a nerve. Okay, I can see in this photograph here of the bone tissue. Now the black parts here are the holes or the lacunae in which the bone cells are found. Okay, and then you can see the concentric circles, which is the way in which the bone cells are arranged. Okay, with the center. Now in this center part here, okay, we have the nerve, artery, and vein in it. Okay, so is bone a living or dead tissue? What do you think? So let's come to our fun question. Is bone a living or dead tissue? Explain your answer. Give two reasons, right? So based on what you have studied, bone is actually a living tissue. Why? Because it contains living cells called the osteocytes, blood vessels, and even nerves. So if the bone is broken, we can feel a pain also, right? And if bone is broken, it's able to grow, it's able to repair itself and heal. And whatever fractures, it can be joined back together. Bones can be joined back together, and fractures can heal. So apart from that, in children, the bone is able to grow. Okay, so all these are characteristics of living tissues. Okay, having living cells, blood vessels, nerves, able to grow and repair itself. Come to adipose tissue. It's located under the dermis of the skin and on the surface of organs. Okay, let's look at this picture of the skin, the layers of the skin. So the upper few layers comprises the epidermis, and below the epidermis is the dermis. Then below the dermis is the hypodermis. Hypo means underneath. Hypodermis, and this is where the adipose tissue is found. Okay, this yellow layer here. All right, the cells look like this. All right, as shown in this picture on the right here, below. So the adipose tissue is located under the dermis of the skin, all right, and on the surface of organs like the heart. Now, adipose tissue contains fat cells that store fats or lipids, right? As you can see in this photo here of the fat cells, you can see the white stuff, the white material or substance in the cells, okay, which makes the cells sort of expand, okay, and become rounded in shape. Okay, so these are the fat stores or lipid stores. Okay, now this diagram here, the drawing shows you the fat being stored. This is in a bit orange, the color, and you can see the nuclei of the fat cells. They are pushed to the sides. Okay, now you can see the black dots here are the nuclei of the nuclei, and cytoplasm is pushed to the sides. Okay, because the fat store is quite big. Now, what is the function of adipose tissue? It stores fats as energy store. Okay, that means it can be used in case a person does not get enough energy or does not eat enough carbohydrates. Then the fat stores can be used to produce energy through respiration. Okay, to break down the fat. Next, adipose tissue provides insulation from cold and cushions organs from shocks. So providing insulation from cold. People who live in the cold countries, they eat a lot of fats, right? So that these fats can be stored in the adipose tissue, for example, under the skin, and this can provide insulation from cold, especially during winter. All right, to prevent the heat in the body, inside the body, from being lost too quickly to the environment. Okay. Next, it cushions the organs from shocks, as we have discussed just now. For example, the fats that surround the organs, like the heart and other organs. It will help to absorb shock, okay, during movement. Let's look at this question, which is similar to the question in our textbook. Okay, there's one question in the formative exercise. So let's discuss this question. Now, how are fat cells adapted to store fat? Adapted means how are they suited to store fat? That means you have to explain their characteristics, right? So fat cells look like this. They have a big area where the fat is stored, called the fat reservoir, and they have very little cytoplasm that is pushed to the side. Okay, so these are the answers. 3 ways in which fat cells are adapted. The first way is that they contain very little cytoplasm within each fat cell. There's very little cytoplasm to provide more space for more fat to be stored. Okay, you must mention the word more space and more fat. Just don't just write to provide space for fat to be stored. More fat. Okay, more space for more fat to be stored. Okay, so this whole space is used to store the fat. Now, so one mark for the whole thing, and you have to have 2 parts. First is the characteristic, very little cytoplasm. Second one is what's the reason? To provide more space for more fat to be stored. Okay. Now, the second adaptation is that the fat cells contain very few mitochondria in the cytoplasm here, right? Compared to normal cells. Because the cells do not need a lot of energy. Okay. So they have less organelles in that sense. Okay, they don't need much energy. And they are in fact storing the energy stored. Okay. So very few mitochondria is the characteristic, and then the reason why is so that the cells is because the cells do not need a lot of energy. And thirdly, fat cells can expand, right? So that's the characteristic. For what reason? To store more fat. Okay. So here you see a fat cell that has expanded to a very large size because it stores a lot of fat inside. Okay. So when fat cells check, okay, this is just a joke. When fat cells check, they may talk things about the amount of fat in them, right? Okay. So if a person eats a lot of durians, durian is a fruit with very high fat content. Then the fat, if it's in excess, it will be stored in the fat cells or adipose tissue. All right. And the fat cells will expand to a bigger size. Okay, to store the fat. So this can be a new SPM HOTS question. Since it's in the textbook too, right? You need to know about the 3 adaptations of fat cells. We come to blood. So blood is also a connective tissue, right? Now, the composition of blood. Blood consists of 3 types of cells suspended in a liquid matrix, which is the plasma. So plasma is the liquid part of blood that is pale yellow in color. Okay, so inside the plasma, there are 3 different types of cells. So the first type of cell is called the red blood cell or erythrocytes, which transport oxygen to the cells. Okay, so it's biconcave and it is disc shape, rounded in shape but flat. Next, we have the white blood cells called the leukocytes, which defend the body against pathogens. One way they defend the body is to surround or engulf the pathogens or germs and then digest them. Next, we have platelets. So platelets are these tiny cell fragments. They are not whole cells. Okay, they are cell fragments, bits and pieces of the cells, but they are very important to help in the blood clotting mechanism at wounds, especially when a person gets a cut, a small cut. Then after a while, the blood will stop flowing because blood will clot at the wound. They'll sort of solidify or coagulate. Okay, but I call it blood clotting, and then this will prevent excessive blood loss at the wounds. Now, fourthly, blood plasma, the other component of blood is blood plasma, the fluid part. This transports, plasma transports glucose and hormones to cells, regulates body temperature through vasodilation, right? Because the plasma carries the heat from the body. It absorbs the heat from the body, okay? So it can allow this heat can be lost from the body through vasodilation when the blood vessels expand a bit and carry more blood to the surface of the skin. Okay, then the heat will be lost from the blood to the environment. So in this picture, we see a blood smear. All right, this is just a drawing for start. You can see the erythrocytes or red blood cells, okay, which are round and they are shaped like biconcave discs, okay. And then we have the leukocytes, which are a bit bigger. There are many different types of leukocytes. Now this picture shows a blood smear taken when a drop of blood is smeared on a slide, and then observed under the microscope. Okay, so we can see that the blood contains erythrocytes or red blood cells. All right, these ones. So you can see the empty transparent part here because there's no nucleus. Okay, and this part here in the center is thinner, okay, than the outer layer. Okay, so it looks as though there's a hole, but there's no hole. Okay, it's just there's a thin layer, and this is the side, the erythrocyte. Okay, then we have a lot of different types of white blood cells called the neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils. These are all white blood cells. We will study this in a later chapter. Okay, the types of white blood cells. So white blood cells have nuclei, which are of different shapes. Now next we have the tiny cell fragments called the platelets, okay, which are important in blood clotting, okay, blood clotting mechanism at the wound. Now, and then we have the fluid part of the blood called the plasma. So lastly, we are going to study about another type of connective tissue called lymph. So lymph is a pale yellow fluid formed when the tissue fluid in between the cells flows into the lymphatic system in the body. So lymphatic system is shown here, is a type of circulatory system that's different from the blood circulatory system, but it's connected to the blood circulatory system. So in this lymphatic circulatory system, the lymph will flow, and it is a pale yellow fluid, okay, that's formed when the tissue fluid in between cells flow into or move into the lymphatic system. Okay, so the fluid in the lymphatic system is called lymph. Composition. Lymph contains water, leukocytes or white blood cells, nutrients, gases, hormones, and enzymes. So functions. Firstly, it is used in body defense because lymph contains leukocytes that can destroy pathogens. Secondly, lymph helps to transport the lipids from the intestines to the blood, okay? Because the lipids that are found in the small intestine will be absorbed into the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system will carry the lipids to the blood. Thirdly, lymph returns tissue fluid back to the blood. Tissue fluid is the fluid in between the cells. So all this will be drained into the, a percentage of tissue fluid will be drained into the lymphatic system and will be carried back to the blood because the lymphatic system is connected to the blood circulatory system. Lastly, that's nerve tissue. So we have to learn the structure and the functions of nerve tissue. So the final and fourth type of animal tissue or human tissue is the nerve tissue, sometimes called the nervous tissue. Okay, so we use this term, nerve tissue. So again, this question on nerve tissue, a question on that has been asked in SPM 2021. All right, it's just an objective question. We have to recognize that if they show a picture of the nerve cells, the neurons, all right, together, then it is called a tissue, right? So where is the organ in which the nerve tissues are found? For example, the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, these are the organs that have a high concentration of nerve tissues. Right, so firstly, nerve tissue is made up of neurons or nerve cells. Now, the British spelling for neurons has an E at the end. The American spelling does not have E. So we use the British spelling. Okay. Now, the structure of nerve tissue. If you are asked what is the structure of nerve tissue, first we can mention that nerve tissues consist of neurons, and neurons have cell bodies, and nerve fibers called dendrites and dendrons, and also axons. Okay, so looking at this picture of the cell, we can see that this part is the cell body. It consists of the cytoplasm and the nucleus. And then projecting out from the cell body are different types of nerve fibers. Okay, the main one here, or the one shown here, are the dendrites. All these are dendrites. Dendrites combine to form dendrons. Okay, somewhere here, and then this is the cell body. Okay, the cytoplasm nucleus. So the function of dendrites and dendrons is to transmit the nerve impulses towards the cell body, Okay. Then there's another long strand of fiber called the axon. So axon for the motor neuron is quite long. Now, the axon transmits nerve impulses away from the cell body. Okay. So this is a picture of a motor neuron, a type of neuron. There are a few types of neurons in the body. Okay, it's just one type. Now, if you look below here, this is a real photograph of the motor neuron. You can see this part here is the cell body, okay, which is dark purple or gray in color. And then the nucleus is in the center here, okay, and then you can see all the fibers extending out from the cell body. So they are the dendrites and the axon. Okay, functions. The general function of nerve tissue is to control and coordinate body activities. Okay, now how does it do that? First, it is able to detect stimuli, which are changes in the environment, like light, sound, or changes in temperature of the environment. And after that, they will transmit or send nerve impulses. Okay, so nerve impulses are electrical signals with information to the brain, muscles, or glands for a response from the organism towards a stimuli. Okay, so the main function is the top, and then you can talk about the more specific function below here if more marks are given. A question to test yourself. Which of the following is not a connective tissue? So this diagram shows you 4 pictures. So identify what's the cell or the tissues in the picture, and then after that select the one that is not a connective tissue. Right? So you can pause the video for a while if you need time to think about it for about 1 minute. Okay, let's look at the answer. Now, firstly, we identify the tissues involved here. All right? Or identify the items that are shown here. What is A? You can see the circular patterns and then the concentric rings, right? And then in the center, there are tube-like structures. All right? So this is actually, from the pattern, the circular patterns, we know that this is bone tissue, right? And the center part, all these are the tubes representing the arteries, veins, and other components. Now, what about B? So if you look at B, you can see that these cells do not have nuclei, and this cell, the bigger cell, has a looped nuclei. So when you see the looped nuclei, it's probably the white blood cells, okay? And these cells without the nucleus each are the red blood cells. So B is the blood, which is also a tissue. Is it a connective tissue? Yes. Bone and blood are both connective tissues. How about C? Does it look familiar? All right, this tissue is was studied in the previous video. Okay, can see the flat cells, and they are all arranged on top of one another. The layers, there are many layers of this cell. So this is actually epithelial tissue. The type of epithelial tissue is the stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, stratified means that it's made of few layers. Squamous means the cells are flat in shape. Okay, so there are many layers of flat cells here, and this type of tissue is found in the skin and also in other places like the esophagus. Okay. Now next, D is adipose tissue. So what we see here are the cells that have expanded to a large size because of the storage of fats in them. Okay, and the black parts here, some of them represent the nucleus. Okay, the nuclei of the cells. They are pushed to the corner by the fat reserves. So our answer is C. Okay, because bone tissue, blood, and also adipose tissue are all connective tissues. Epithelial tissue is a group that's separate from connective tissues. Okay, so the answer is C. Right, that's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing, and I hope that this lesson has been beneficial to you. So remember the memory aid for connective tissues, which is fat cat blob law. Please do share, like, and subscribe to my channel. And all the best to you. Till we meet again, goodbye for now.